I know you guys are familiar with conversational AI, pretty much chatbots. And I think this is a really cool topic because the topic is about, the topic deals with customer service, if you will, or the customer experience. And that's conversational AI is just really big in that particular topic. I know definitely that when you think about conversational AI, you think about like as a business, you're saying like, what type of data should we, or what type of task should we automate, right? And I definitely, because when you think about a task, you're saying to yourself, okay, what task should we automate so that we can free up resources, that kind of thing, and increase productivity. So that's going to be really good conversation, and definitely a good presentation. Our next speaker here is trying to work out some kinks, and I think that we're going to take a short break here because she's trying to work out something. But conversational AI, I think conversational AI is going to just simply explode, if you will. It's going to get even bigger because companies are trying to figure out how to become obsessive, right, about the customer experience. That is absolutely top of mind for businesses because, customers, it's not about the customer's always right, but how far are you willing to go to give this customer this great experience, and talk about your products and talk and create a story, if you will, about your company. There's a lot of things you can do with conversational AI, and it certainly goes beyond just simply Alexa, right? Or chatbots. But I'm looking forward to seeing the next presentation. Okay. Well, she's still not there. Conversational AI, whether you talk about chatbots, I've been using chatbots for quite a while. As you know, chatbots are not necessarily new. They've been around for a while, but because of the explosion of data, right, we've been able to really make these chatbots work to elevate the experience, and companies are really now using them. So I'm looking forward to what her, okay, she's still not available. All right, she's still working out some twinks here, some kinks. Let me say this about it. I know that she's gonna be talking about how to upskill with conversational AI. And it's interesting because over the last year during the pandemic, I have been able to, and I shared this earlier, I think at the very beginning, I have been able to take a number of courses on a number of platforms, get certified. So I have a number of certifications on artificial intelligence and machine learning and deep learning. But the upskilling issue is going to be completely top of mind for a number of people during this particular decade. We know definitely, as I talked with someone earlier, that skills are going to become perishable. This, of course, is something that a lot of futurists have talked about, right? And what that means essentially is that, 1 year you may have some sort of skill set, and the next year is not maybe that the skill set will become passé, but you will have to essentially learn something new, and maybe learn not just one thing or two things, but maybe a number of things. And that really is to keep pace with the technology. Because so much, right, is happening now, IoT and quantum computing and quantum ethics that we talked about earlier. The upskilling, right, or just simply elevating your education, that's going to be absolutely important. So whether it's quantum, IoT, any particular innovation, but so much is happening rapidly in the United States, in Europe, all over the world. And so we're definitely going to need to put a greater emphasis on upskilling, and definitely at the education level, certainly learning digital skills. So here we go. I don't have to riff anymore. How you doing?
I've been here since 4 p.m., so I'm really sorry. I don't know what happened. Computers crashed. Sorry about that.
No problem. Hey, it's technology, so it happens. So, as I discussed earlier, just about conversational AI and the importance of it, and certainly being upskilled in this for your teams and certainly individually. So, you can go into your background, talk about your passion for the topic, and looking forward to your presentation.
Thanks, Sean. Right, so welcome everyone. Sorry about the delay. I've made it a short presentation anyway. Just a second. Right. So, upskilling. What is it? I've been in this field for about 10 years now, and I've got a lot of experience as to early adopters, and what the problems are when you talk about AI. There's often a fear, and this is why I wanted to speak here. Beyond the hype is actually probably the antidote. People's fear comes from the hype, from media, from science fiction films, the idea that robots are going to replace us, and on a personal level, I might lose my job. So if you break it down as to why are they afraid of this, it's often because they think it's going to become humanoid. This thing called AI might get emotionally intelligent because it can understand me and therefore understand the world and do my job. But how realistic is that? I mean, we have seen AI applications claiming to be able to read people's faces and tell if they're angry, happy, or sad. But that is often culturally context, it's derived from a cultural context. The truth of the matter is, and the experts among us know very well, AI often struggles to recognize a banana and distinguish it from an orange. So we're talking, basic identification tasks. This is one of the 3 types of AI I like to break AI down into when I give talks or workshops, is that it's not a monolithic entity. And I think that is the problem in the hype cycle and the hype dialogue that surrounds this. It's not homogenous. I've come from a humanities background originally, and to use some old literary theory, humanities, it's heterogeneous. It's not homogenous. It's not one single thing. So I think that's the first way to de-hype the whole field, if you like, so that it's not just the next big thing. It has various forms. With COVID and pandemic, we've seen some of its best applications in healthcare, in that it can actually use image recognition. So going from bananas and oranges to people's faces to actually being really useful in a pandemic, trying to analyze millions of images of x-rays of which lungs have COVID or not. Then there's another layer of AI that makes it so diverse, in that there's machine learning, and some of the speakers at the conference this week have gone on deep dives into machine learning, so I won't go there. But in my field, in retail, that's where it's often used, is that it's predictive analytics to deliver personalized ads. So even if it's tracking you through applications like Google Maps or Fitbits, it's often the whole purpose is aiming at advertising. That's the business model behind social media. If it's free, then that means you're the product, as someone once famously said. And then conversational AI is another type of application in this field of so many different programs, different algorithms, and that's called NLP, NLU. You might have heard of speech recognition, or what's now known as voice tech. And that's basically getting those chatbots you've probably come across with banking, obviously in applications like Slack and so on, where they're now adding voice to the mix. And again, there's a commercial drive there. They've got to make money out of it. We're not all doing this out of the goodness of our heart. We have to have a business model and put AI out in the marketplace to make the owners of it money. And so you've also probably heard from some of the speakers the ethics side of it, where there's racial bias in AI applications, especially in facial recognition. We can go into that in more depth at the end of my talk, if you like. And then, as I said, if everyone here has a smartphone, you are basically using AI, whether you like it or not, in terms of cookies and tracking and social media. But the topic of today is, will it really make you redundant, or your colleagues, or people you talk to about AI, and is it really a threat? I think if we de-hype the whole field, we can really look at how useful is it? Will it help me do my job better? And often that is the case. I mean, if you look at the whole field in the last 10 years, there's just simply not an example where a human has been completely replaced. So the example of the COVID lung diagnosis, we've still got doctors and specialists. They just haven't been replaced en masse with a computer program. That's never going to happen. It's an aid. It's going to help specialists do their jobs, but it also will help people in very basic sort of tasks. It can help you in the office. In industry and manufacturing, yes, it has actually replaced some jobs, perhaps some people doing manufacturing assembly, but they've often been upskilled and reskilled at somewhere else in the factory. So the famous example is the robot arm. That actually was a great innovation for health and safety, so that those workers who used to do heavy lifting in a car manufacturing assembly plant are no longer getting back injuries, arm injuries, any type of physical injury, because a robot arm, gigantic arm, is doing all the heavy lifting. The same in aged care homes. In commerce, that's what we're going to look at here in more depth. Yes, there's an automation going on where some people have been replaced, but they have been reskilled, upskilled into other parts of the customer service workflow chain. So the famous example of call centers, and often there's hyped chatbot companies saying we can replace your whole call center. That's simply untrue. That's hype, because at the end of the day, and everyone in my industry knows, you need to have chatbots working in a hybrid way with human colleagues, because as soon as it gets a bit more complex, for example, where you've got robotic process automation, somebody books a flight or a holiday through a chatbot. If they go to cancel it, which is likely given the pandemic and lockdowns and all sorts of restrictions on travel for the next year or so, as soon as it gets complex, you need a human to get involved with the cancellation and the rebooking. A chatbot just can't handle it. It's not that smart yet. But in terms of basic level interaction with customers, so en masse, if you've got 1 million people desperate to go on holiday and they all asking the same question, can I fly? Is the flight on time? All those basic, really drudge questions of, yes, the flight is going as planned, no, it's been cancelled. Well, that's a first layer of communication that a chatbot can definitely handle. It can make your life easier, and it can make the staff member their life easier. So they can get to do, they've got more time to deal with the more complicated questions of, okay, it has been delayed. Can you get me a hotel? I need to stay overnight, blah, blah. So it's the assembly line of communication, if you like, that chatbot communications and the frequently asked questions can replace those basic jobs, but it leaves the person in place at work to do the high quality work. And let's face it, high quality work means more job satisfaction. So that's a real upside that's rarely discussed in the hype surrounding AI and this particular form of AI. So introducing RPAs, that's a robotic process automation, conversational AI to deal with customers, tourists, conference visitors, B2B inquiries about products and services, can only enhance the customer stakeholder experience because they get immediate responses to their queries. That's the other thing. Gen Y, Gen Z, they want to know now. They don't want to send off an email through a contact form, wait 24 hours. That's ridiculous for a Gen Z to wait 24 hours for an answer. They want to know right now, instant message. Yes, the chatbot says, yes, you can go on your holiday. And the best thing is, and this is the turning point in what they talk about, the paradigm shift, is that the accuracy of the chatbot answers are better, and more to the point in my particular field where I've been working, speech recognition and voice is now getting up to 95% accuracy. So when you talk to it rather than type to it, it will understand you and give a positive, a correct response, and also in various languages. My company, for example, is up to 150 languages, and we can take a look at that. So the topic is, well, what's the problem? Why, if this is so fantastic, why aren't we all using it? Why haven't got it in every single company? And there's been lots of business intelligence and analysis saying, oh, 80% of companies are going to have a chatbot or voice assistant or a virtual assistant by 2025 and so on. Well, that's just not happening. It's, as another speaker, Jeffrey Funk this week said, it's really slow. And I want to look at from the staff side, why it's slow. Well, it's good old mindset. Some of you in HR might have heard fixed mindset, growth mindset, and that's just basic sort of human nature. If I don't understand it, or if I'm scared by it, I'm not going to adopt it. I'm not going to use this thing that is somehow threatening me. And it's sort of an instinctive human behavior that comes up at work, and this is what we have to get past. It's no good selling an AI-based application into any type of company or government department if once it's there and installed, the people on the ground there who come into work every day are just going to ignore it and not use it, and even worse, tell the clients and the customers not to use it or just not even mention it. So we've seen this time and time again, that it's not just an entrepreneur-driven innovation. It really has to be adopted by the people within an organization at the end of the day. So here we can see an image of people being in a sort of a relaxed environment, and this is something from corporate sorry about that. Coaching that I've done in the past in Germany. It's much better to run your workshops and training in a way that is accessible, not intimidating, and makes it, without patronizing people within the upskilling or further education, it's called, getting to grips with, this is how we're going to do things, but we'll do it perhaps in a piecemeal way. We've had this experience in a rollout we've just had in Germany. You can see here we're in a smart town application. This is in German only, but she also switches to English to be a promoter for tourism in Australia. And here she's a promoter of tourism locally in a town in a region on Lake Constance. So if you're going to be introducing this cutting edge innovation, you really have to sort of, again, break it down, not use too much jargon, and get really hands-on with people who are actually implementing it on the ground, in this instance, a car showroom, and really explain how to create the content, make it as simple as possible for the people behind the bot to create the purpose and functionality of it. And you could hit them with the sort of technical side, but more often than not, in deploying emerging tech, you have to sort of skip this technical bit. It's rare, even webmasters, this might go over their head and then they feel threatened. So you really have to sort of meet people and peg them at what level of interest, not necessarily their educational background, because you often find geeks who might be librarians or somebody who you don't expect might have a lot of technical knowledge. So you can probably get access to this video later on. I like the topic of today, crafting future scenarios, because here's a bit of sticky tape and paper. We had to stick this on, and this is on the many parts we did in Germany, in a shopping center, in a big restaurant and a venue. We had to put on boards because this made the new tech less intimidating. If it was just a hologram sitting there, people would sometimes be afraid of it, because when they realized it was interactive and being spontaneous and not just a video recording, it freaked some people out. So we've sort of made it really palatable, non-threatening, by having old tape of sticky tape and paper, or a pasted board, cardboard, or a big sign in the shopping center. People read that, onboarded themselves. We trained the bot to onboard people anyway, so that was that problem solved. In the conversational AI, she would talk in German or English and tell people what she was and what people could ask her and what sort of information she had available. So we built that into the conversational AI, thinking that, well, logically she had to stand there on her own to support staff and wasn't being supervised, unsupervised AI. So yeah, AI can be fun. I think we can't lose sight of that in doing further education. So just a minute, I'll turn off the video because I can still hear that in the background. And yeah, I saw these different types of robots playing football, and this is the level it's at. How can this be threatening if they're flat out kicking the ball around? That's they're not that mobile. They're not going to take over our jobs because it's very limited in terms of robotic mobility, what they can actually do. It has to be a very specific task. And aged care, or walking around aged care homes, or most of them can just lift a person out of a bed into another bed, or the ones that are mobile, like Pepper robots, they're not that mobile. They're a bit like a vacuum cleaner that you've seen, a smart vacuum cleaner. I saw something funny though, watching them play soccer, and one of them came up to another player and pushed it over so that it could score a goal. So I don't know if that was pre-programmed. I'm not going to hype it and say that was emotionally intelligent and really clever, but it was pretty funny at the time. So conversational AI needs to be introduced into workplaces and teams incrementally, so bit by bit, on a case-by-case basis, so that staff don't get overwhelmed with jargon, with how they're going to change their workflow. Is it going to harm my job prospects in any way? And also when they see the real need for it, as we showed in the pandemic last year, that when there was skeleton staff, they could supplement themselves with a hologram, and it helped keep customers happy while that car showroom was open for the garage repairs. And that way people will adopt it and use it, and the customers will as well. People then open up again. It's a natural instinct of human nature. When their fear is gone, that it's not going to take over, it's only going to take over the mundane and boring tasks, and they can then concentrate on the great, enjoyable bits of their job that they like doing, assuming that most people like the work they're doing. So the overall message, and that's lived and breathed in working with a bot, or in a manufacturing setting, it's called a co-bot, a cooperative bot. This makes a person feel more valuable, not more redundant. Conclusion: invest more in light touch fun training and workshops, keeps the staff's mindset and attitude to adopting bodified tech, whether it's machine learning powered or pure NLP based conversational AI. So here, this is an example of more open dialogue rather than from on top, top down, on high, and acknowledge people's fears. They're not silly, they're not behind or backward. Agree, even if you're the expert and it's illogical to have that fear, just accept that that is a valid criticism. They're not that mobile, they're flat out playing soccer, but they can be really valuable in health and safety, so that you don't put your back out when you're lifting a patient or an aged care resident from one bed to the next. And that for applied AI in retail, it can actually improve customer service and satisfaction, especially with Gen Z and the millennials. They don't want to wait for an answer when it's frequently asked questions. So on a final note, we also have to be aware of gender bias in AI. It's male dominated. I mean, I can't count, 9 out of 10 AI teams are all male. In places like Germany, many European countries, slowly that's changing. You're getting more women as founders and managers. But then as trainers, we also need to have mixed teams. And I think, we need diversity, age, be really inclusive, because it's not just about presenting AI as a non-monolithic, heterogeneous type of science or new ways of doing work. It has to be taught from the ground up in a diverse way, so that people understand that they're getting this new knowledge and new experience from peers and people like themselves. So that's the end of my talk.
All right. Well, I loved it. Thank you so much. You really shined a light on conversational AI. I think I said something when I was riffing there.
I think you said my talk. I think you gave my talk.
Oh, goodness.
Spontaneously.
But one of the things that I think I said is automating data. What I meant was automating inquiries, right? So
frequently asked questions.
Yeah. So what type of inquiries do you think? I mean, I know that's a question that a company, I guess it depends on the company and depends on the industry, but just, just in a general sense, what type of inquiries, do you think maybe companies should be trying to automate, and which ones, maybe not so much?
Yeah. Well, we're one of the pioneering companies taking mixed reality into public spaces. So as the programming team, we got all excited. We found our hologram partner and we developed this holographic 3D avatar, and we took it to this massive shopping center chain, and they said, okay, let's do the brain together, the content. What are the questions you wanted answered? And we were thinking, wow, high level stuff. And this is statistically true, the most frequently asked question in any shopping center anywhere in the world is, where are the toilets? So, and that is just the mundane side of it, where, they could have information desk people sitting there people there all day, and then there's a big queue developing because they're telling 100 people every hour where the toilets are, when you've got footfall of, say, thousands of people in one shopping center every day, and most of them want to know where the loo are. And in fact, when we actually plugged and played it and switched it on, that was 2019, a woman came up with a child in a pram, and the very first question our fancy hologram had to answer was, where are the toilets? And she asked in broken German. She was from Eastern Europe, so German was her second language, and she was so happy, one, that she got urgent information urgently, but two, that this avatar answered her promptly, understood her, and that whole customer experience, as banal as that is, I bet she had a different experience of that shopping center. So, that's just a stark example of, the best thing is to find out from the client and the particular context. So if it's in a 3D space, like we had it on Lake Constance in a restaurant, and we asked the waiters, what is the biggest time waster where, restaurant goers are bothering you and you're losing time and you're not productive? And they said, well, we have these classic cars on exhibition and we get held up all the time. People think we're like museum assistants. We have to deliver the drinks. So get the hologram to explain what this car is and how old it is and why it's here. So this is the beauty of the application, is that you can really ask the client, what are their needs at the point of deployment? So banking, you can imagine, frequently asked questions is, do you want a savings account? What are you here for today? Can I help you? You find out. It's sort of the first principles of customer service and the first principles of sales. And as a rule of thumb, a good salesperson will know it depends on the individual, the context, might even be the time of day.
Okay. And I guess the next question here, because I'm going to ask you some pretty quick questions so we go into the panel. But just three questions here. I guess the next question about the conversational AI, should a company buy it or should they build it? And I would think that if they were building it internally, right, that could perhaps foster some connectedness maybe within the company, across teams, that kind of thing. What would be your recommendation, or is it just simply up to the company?
Most of the time they're licensing it in. If they're going to try something where they're trying to use a chatbot, there's thousands of chatbot companies now. So the usual setup is that a company will say, okay, we need a chatbot meet and greet on our website. These are usually text-based because the voice assistants haven't been scaled up. Again, we're at the pioneering edge of that, getting voice bots to work on any browser. So we're talking text-based chatbots. They'll just license it and pay per month. But for the really more complex stuff, the stuff that we're doing in mixed reality and in public spaces, like we're moving our pilot from the car showroom and the repair shop into the heart of the towns, because the citizens there want to get it to be a proper wayfinder. So in that regard, you can either license it or a company can try and build it, but the problem is there's so few companies doing the sort of really complex stuff. They're not likely to be able to go and build it themselves. So right. It's usually a licensed setup.
Okay. Now, I know one thing you talked about is, fostering more diversity and inclusion in AI, women and racial minorities in particular. You really want to have mixed teams, and it just seems like a slow going though. It really does. And so what would be your, sort of like I mean, is this a situation where, because we had someone yesterday who started her own machine learning, entity, and works with companies, that kind of thing. And I think that's maybe an approach. And then companies see, oh, well, we have all of these individuals who don't look like, the individuals in our company. Maybe we should be hiring, them. So what type of approach do you see? Do you think that it's just leave it up to private industry, to understand, and even academia, to see that they need more diversity and inclusion? Or is this something where, maybe like a gentle nudge from governments, if you will?
Yeah, we've seen that. I know what you're getting at. The quota system for women on boards, for example, like Norway, will penalise any company that's publicly listed company that doesn't have 40% women on its boards.
Right.
Which is, I personally think it's good. It's controversial, obviously, in every other country. But something like that on a board level needs to happen, because they're too resistant to change. On the sort of small scale up startup scene, I think we have to really pressure our peers, and this is why I'm talking about it more and more and joining, women in business groups, is that we need to really confront and challenge these all male teams, because there's no excuse to say, and it's not just all male but all white, and white, it makes good business sense for a start. If you cut out 50% of the female population and whatever the percentage is of people who, people of color, or if you're not including the local community, and it's just conspicuously all white, all male team, that's just that is passé. First of all, I sort of challenge them in a way of saying this is just no longer up to date, and secondly, it's really bad for business, and it's bad for your corporate image. Right. Apart from the fact you're not going to make money. I mean, it might be what they used to call the pink dollar, if it's LGBTQ, whatever. It's got to not always look at commercial terms, but at the end of the day, it's a return on investment. It's not just a publicity exercise. Because the people they're trying to reflect are, end effect customers as well, and future recruits. So I think with the war on talent, as the speaker before me said, there is a need, for analysts. The first speaker said, there's, they can't afford to discriminate anymore.
Right. Well, but also the other issue too is what, like you're saying, is that I think in a way you sort of like can unlock this untapped pool of talent, I mean, so it's like you're contributing to the economy, I guess you could say that, you know what I mean?
Yeah. My personal view is, I tell managers this, anyone I consult and advise, anyone can be upskilled. So,
yes.
You can get, I've trained up people coming straight from school, 16, 17-year-olds as a trend scout. They're the perfect trend scout, but it's not a matter of formal education anymore.
Right. Well, I want to ask you a fun question. This is the last one. I asked someone on day one about, because you mentioned you had a robot there, and then you were talking about like the fear that maybe AI and robotics are going to dramatically impact the workforce. Mm-hmm. So one of the things that Bill Gates, I'm not sure if you saw it day one, but one of the things that I was asking the guys, one of the things that Bill Gates has proposed is taxing robots, right? I'm sure you've heard this scheme, taxing robots to pay for re-education or even upskilling, I guess, if you will. Yeah. And, they're trying to upskill and re-educate the population, maybe in a particular region or country, and to pay for the healthcare of a aging population. You know what I mean? The world is getting older. Yeah. So what are your thoughts on that? I know definitely that the EU took this up. It was voted down. Not necessarily convincingly voted down, but it was not necessarily adopted. And we haven't even begun to talk about this in the United States, because when you have 50 states sometime, and you know this, you have 50 different approaches to an issue. So typically it starts in California or starts maybe in New York and here in Washington, and then it just kind of like slowly, touches other entities here. But what are your thoughts on that? How do you see that as a proposal?
Yeah, there are countries in Europe that are already doing that in terms of welfare benefits. So looking at
Oh,
the technology in the workforce, it's not necessarily AI as the source of it or robots, but where there's mass redundancies because there's just fewer and fewer jobs available, having a pension or a social welfare benefit that is a safety net. So that's the stark contrast from to the US. Obviously, is that you're still battling getting healthcare for everyone, right? So that and certainly people think it's communist to think that to have a safety net is somehow radical, whereas here we take it for granted. A lot of
right.
most European countries, and where I grew up in Australia, we take it for granted. Public healthcare is not a political thing; it's just normality. And so an extension of that, I think, is where we see the employment permanently changing because technology, whatever form it takes, it's just automation or fossil fuel industries closing down, or like we saw mines close down, and it can be replaced by green tech jobs.
Right.
That can happen, but that's going to take a while. So in the interim, leading countries like Switzerland has looked at this. I think the Netherlands, the Scandinavians, in any case, they're introducing, this safety net while these new jobs are being created.
Right.
Because there's this as I was trying to show was that there's a conflict at organizations that know they need to create new jobs, but it's just not going to happen overnight because of all the internal resistance at every level.
Got it. Okay. Well, yeah, I think it's a fascinating topic. And of course, one of the things that he talked about in this video, which is it bounces around social media, Bill Gates talking about this. He was saying that when you tax, you actually can make up for the loss of a person who contributes to the tax base. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So that's the main issue.
Yeah, so sort of like one job gone, one job in. But I think it's got to be more comprehensive on it. There's a whole lot of people going to slip through the net. So if you're not already a corporate employee, how are you actually going to get that benefit? And even if Gates does do it on that meta level of taxing whole companies and industries, it's a matter of distribution, isn't it? But if you've got the safety net, I think that's the best way to go. They call it the basic income in Germany, the universal basic income. They're talking about here in the UK. It's obviously very politicized because people think it's just a dole for nothing. But I think the bigger picture is it's going to happen anyway. Society can't just let people fall by the wayside. And technology, it's not just technology, it's just some industries are going out of fashion because of the planet's burning down. We've got to save the planet as a priority. And in the transition and reforming and restructuring, you can't let parts of society be neglected.
Oh, very, very good point. And very good presentation. I loved it.
Yes. Sorry about it wasn't on my end, just so you know. It actually happened somewhere in Manchester.
And you know what? These kinds of things happen. This technology, it will definitely involve some glitches. So don't worry about that.
Yeah.